Thank you for gathering us. And thank you for being with us. You are the light. Shine within us now. You are the Word. Sound within us now. You are the door. Open before us now. Open into the radiance of your Father's face. Good evening. Well, it's just past the halfway mark, and I've almost reached the point where I lapse into random storytelling that happens after a certain age. And I'm feeling very close to that age at this point. But there is one more major, and I will lapse into rather random stories after this. But there is one more major piece to the picture that I need to speak of. And that piece has to do with Jesus in the play. But before that, I need to pause and lay some groundwork. And while I'm pausing, I want to say that I am doubly gratified with the comment I have been receiving from you all. Number one, I'm happy to hear that at least those of you who have spoken to me like what they are hearing. I'm happy and relieved. Like the guy there's a TV commercial, the slap commercial used to say, "Thanks, I needed that." But I am also pleased that what I've been saying, and I want to congratulate on this, and that what I've been saying is not being perceived as in opposition to other ways of seeing and talking about the same thing. As one of you put it, it just shines another light on everything he already knew. And that's the answer to my prayer. I think we're more aware of this these days, but I think we still need to advert to it, that all the classic formulas of our tradition arose and became classics out of the experience of deep, real men in their day. Each is the expression of an authentic human experience and insight. So, rightly understood, and that's the rub sometimes, rightly understood, they remain true and valuable. Rightly understood, they do not usually clash, but actually illuminate and adjust each other, preventing overbalance and narrowness. And I am delighted to pick up how well this community seems to realize this, or at least to actualize it. It means you are open to a range of perspectives on the one truth. They're almost equal to the number and variety of Brother Boniface's smorgasbords. So you should be well nourished. They got after us for too much variety at our place until we told them it was leftovers. And they said, "What can you say?" In one of our group discussions, we touched on this idea of variety and interpretation, and I used the notion of a transformation equation. The simplest example, I spoke of the Copernican revolution. The sun used to go around the earth, and then Copernicus, it was Ptolemy, and then Copernicus came along and said, "No, the earth goes around the sun." And everybody said, "That's right." And Einstein came along and he said, "They're both right. Depends on which one you're standing on." And which one you decide is, well, Einstein supplies what we call a transformation equation, a thing that makes sense out of both of them. And a much simpler one is I was looking at a couple of different surveys of our property in Georgia, made by two different surveyors at different times, and one surveyor said that our property line ran north by east 37 degrees for 1.2 miles. And the other surveyor said that property line ran south by west 37 degrees for 1.2 miles. And, the transformation equation is that second surveyor was standing from the first surveyor north by east 1.2 miles away. And you get that equation, you know what's going on. They were looking from opposite directions. And they're both talking about exactly the same thing. Okay, I'm going to say first, the Old Testament always gets it, so I'll say it. Some of the Old Testament writers show us God doing considerable jumping up and down. 1 minute he's loving, next he's hating, now he's protecting, and then he's beating on us. But in the New Testament, St. John tells us God is love. Not that he sometimes loves. St. Paul tells us that Jesus, God incarnate, is just yes, not yes and no. But in the Synoptics, Jesus himself is quoted as telling the story about the sheep and the goats. And the Father is certainly rather rough on the goats. And Jesus, on the other hand, describes the Father who is mooning over the wall, looking for his bum of a son, and who runs to him when he tops the hill. And as Peggy says, I'm sure the Father cried a lot more than the Son. So who's right? Which one is God? As a Catholic, I'm happily stuck with having to believe that all of them are right. All of them are God. Somehow. I mean, if you're in a Protestant sect, you can make the problem easy. You can dump the stuff that doesn't fit your solution. But during this retreat, the equation, or maybe better said, the lens I'm using to look at it all is this simple statement of John. God is love. That verb is the toughie. Doesn't say God is a lover or that God loves. He is love. That's a real good koan to burn into your forehead and go around looking at for a year or two. You see what happens to every text you read if you look at them as you go through the liturgical year, if you look at them with that in the back of your head. You look through it like a lens. So that's my idea, by the way, also of the communion of saints. I might as well get this in. Everyone sees God in the communion of saints. That's the party. Each surveys him from his own position and looks at him through his own lens. And then we spend eternity sharing these different views and visions of him. I could never have yours if you did not share it with me. I can have mine, but I could never have yours. So it's quite important to me that you be at the party. As they say in Georgia, y'all come. You hear? Okay, so now I want to talk about the God I see through this lens of, and that'll be the rest of the time, of St. John's God is love. How he operates. As you might expect, if he is love, he's going to be, in a way, more limited than one who loves and hates, turns on and off, in a way. If he is love, then he is going to have a hard time turning off love. You know, if you just love, that's one thing, but if you are love, pretty hard to turn it off. That means that to describe him from this vantage point, I have to refigure all those passages where he is described as hating things and bashing them around. I have to figure out how it can look like that when he is really just loving everything for all it's worth. That would take a book, not an evening talk, and I couldn't write that book. But you can write it, you can work toward it. And just a hint as to one line of development, an example. I do spiritual direction, counseling sometimes. And a guy comes in, and he's having let's say, he's having a tough time with a stage of his adolescence that he didn't work through at that time. He's hung in there. He feels and he sees everything in terms of control, which he's trying to break out of. Control, competition, dominance, who's on top, who's running the show. That's the whole concern. He's always testing. He's always in the arena, challenging whomever to an arm wrestling match. And I love him. I mean, he's a very good man coming on, and I'm just sitting there rooting for him. That's my fun, to see them grow and become themselves and walk out into life. That's where I get my jollies. But time and again, he comes in and he works the conversation around to this kind of challenge. It's as if he propped his elbow on the bar and said, okay, let's see what kind of a man you are. And I just keep looking at him, drinking my beer and cheering him on. I ain't in any contest. I don't see any contest to be in. I'm just pulling for him to be. Fine. But how does this seem to him? He's told me. He's over this. He feels beaten. He feels dropped flat on his face or some other part of his anatomy. But honest, I didn't lay a glove on him. I didn't down him. I was praying for him to come up. Sometimes a counselee like that will go away many, many times thinking he has been whooped in a wrestling match, until at last he really grasps that I am not in the wrestling match with him. If you hit a badminton ball at me, and I don't even have a racket, you lost the game. I haven't beat you. So he's throwing himself on his own face, the guy finally realized. Now that might just suggest a bit how God can be loving me while my feeling and perception of the situation, or some author's description of it, might sound like he is hating me. Is the devil in hell? Does God's love put him there? In one way, yes. Have you ever hated someone, we don't like to use that word, but you want them out of your life, at least out of sight. You couldn't bear to have them around. You ever, I imagine some of you have had that experience. Sometimes you see people who are, for example, you see people who are second best at something, and they're so consumed with envy of the one who is first best that they are in agony in the presence of that person. I think revenge is another thing. You want them around. But hatred is, go, out of my world, obliterate. I want to forget you, okay? Hatred's gone. Go away. I want to get as far away. Okay. Imagine what it would be like to be, utterly determined to destroy, or at least utterly flee, the eyes that stand within you, holding you in being, and holding you with love. Is Satan in hell? Is God's love putting him there? The fire of love is a fire indeed to those who don't want to be present to it. Okay, so much for a suggestion as to how insistence on this koan, God is love, throws another light on all passages about God. It does not cause us to gainsay those passages. It just brings you to another way of understanding them. So now let's look at the stage of creation and watch God put his image and likeness in the scene. We're on. I'll suppose it's me, you suppose it's you. We entered this, we actually did enter the scene ourselves one day. Okay. Here I am. I'm in the scene. Who am I? What do I do? I look up in the wings, and God is nodding me on, saying, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead with what? Who am I? What do I do? Go ahead, says God. Just be. Just be what? Who am I? I'm in the middle of this scene, and all these others are rushing about like they know exactly what to do. Where's my script? What's my role? Where's my script? God. Script? Script. Oh, you don't need a script. Be yourself. Now, that's a great help. I don't know who myself is. Well, says God, trying to be helpful without getting in the way. I heard Father Matt say that you were my image and likeness. Your role in the play is to be God to all the others. That must be right if Father Matt says so. God is wise. But, says God, no script. I don't make scripts, just things and folks. I told you God was making a mistake. And that was just his biggest mistake. To offer that little bit of stage direction. Because when he tells me to be God, I hear him telling me to lord it over things, to wear a big crown and give big orders and smoke big cigars and get me a big court and a real big army so that I can really run things around here. I knew it was going to happen. See, a very bad case of miscasting. Adam and Sons ain't up to playing God. They got it wrong from the start, and it's gotten worse and worse annually. Don't blame me, Lord. It's your show. I tried to tell you. Well, where do we go from here? I think we have to go to Bethlehem. But I need to mention something else about the predicament of being just love, pure love. If you are just pure love, then, as I say, your options can be pretty limited. Chopping heads off, annihilating, just generally kicking butts around, none of that's available. So if St. John is right about God, he can't get in there and bust up the scene and shove people around and make them do it right. That's against the rules. But as you might expect, infinite awareness is pretty sneaky. Peggy says he's as clever as a man hunting a fox when he's after us. So what does he do? He goes to a Jewish girl and he says, "Can you give me a body?" And he sneaks into the play himself. He's going to show us all how a man should play God to the world. Now that's nice, but I hate to say it. I hate to be discouraging. But I think he came on too late. He should have come in while the scene was a little cleaner. Even God's going to have a rough time with this crowd. You know the story. And I'm not sure. I probably should save I can't. I probably should save this for tomorrow. But I'm beginning to suspect that this really isn't all that innocent, that God didn't just miscalculate when He picked us out to play God in the world. I begin to suspect that He knew all along we wouldn't be able to hack it, that the play would be a flop and a disaster, and that He'd have to get in it Himself to salvage it. He's like that. He sets things up and you say to yourself, I see, He has a plan. And then things go along and don't seem to be coming out, and you say to yourself, what's the matter here? And then it seems He has another plan. And it's hard to tell if He had this one from the start or if He cooked it up when the first plan went off track. It's ambiguous. And He never admits anything. In any case, the impossible has happened, and here He is on the stage with us. So let's watch what He's going to do. He's going to show us all how to be God, the right way to wear a crown, and the way to hold a scepter, and how to make your enemies your footstool. That's all godly stuff. Do seem to be something gone wrong again. That's what comes of God not writing scripts. Nobody knows how to behave, not even His Son. Look at that. He ain't doing nothing. Hanging around Nazareth with the riffraff. Oh, now He's doing something. Just past a miracle. And a good one, too. Water to wine. That should get Him some votes. I think His mother suggested that. But I don't need to tell you, it just didn't work out. He went around sweating and arguing, curing a bunch of unimportant people. He advised people to be like children, be servants, not worry about money, said don't fret. He washed feet. He got in trouble with the powers, and he ended up on the gallows. Oh, he rose from the dead and went back to His Father. But what am I to make of all that? I'm still in the play, and I don't have a script, and I don't know my part. Hey, God, help. God says, be a good boy. Be yourself. Act like me, like my Son showed you and told you. It's impossible. So if God won't tell me how to act, I'll go to some other script writers. The play seems to be teeming with people who are ready to tell me how I should act and give me a role. And so the show goes on as it did before God came in and showed us how. But somehow not the same. There's something funny, something happened. I thought about it, and there seems something strange about Him doing that. How can the dreamer of the dream, the thinker of the things, the watcher of the play, the creator, how can he come in and be part of it? It just seems excessive. He's already more in it than any of us players. His love is lifting it into being. Can He love it anymore? And then it hit me. Trojan horse. Oh, is a Trojan horse. He came in right into the scene, and he overdid it. I think he overdid it. That human being, that wasn't fair, you see. supposed to act like him. That human being was not just loving with a human heart, pumping human love, looking like God. That heart was pumping divine love into the scene. From within the scene, we've been invaded by God. And I'm afraid we might have been infected.